You want your premier players always having a chance. I think he's going to have a chance. To me, that's the sign of a healthy league.
Right now, 5 o'clock, typically not my beat. There's no real top story today, but we do have a top flight guest to talk about one of the big stories of the week. Ben Golliver is the national NBA writer for the Washington Post, and he joins us now. Golliver, what's up, man? Thanks for joining the show.
Not too much, just, getting ready for this 4th of July holiday after a couple of days of NBA free agency, so life is good. I hope the same for you.
Yes, indeed. Exact same. Excited for the holiday. Should be a fun, long weekend, and, we'll see what else goes down. At least this year we're not waiting. It was, 2016 when we were just all waiting, and then Kevin Durant blew up everybody's 4th of July with his own little firework that's when he joined the Warriors on July 4th, so it's always like, NBA PTSD this time of year. Obviously, Durant's been one of the bigger moves, but Ben, just generally speaking, what have you made of kind of the contour of this free agent period? What kind of teams have made moves? What kind of teams have stood pat? What have you made based off of what you expected to happen of how these first early days of free agency have gone?
Well, I'll be honest. I think I share your nostalgia. I mean, the good old days of Kevin Durant at the Hamptons with the different meetings, or guys like Carmelo Anthony going from city to city, getting their jerseys held up by the organizations trying to recruit them. They feel long gone. It's been, I would say, kind of a relatively boring start to free agency. We haven't seen a ton of blockbuster moves yet. Teams don't have cap space. There's not a ton of buying power out there. And so it's been, I think, more about the trades, like you mentioned. I mean, Kevin Durant getting traded even before the draft to the Houston Rockets, it signals the Rockets mean business. They've backed that up with a whole bunch of re-signings of their own players. They go out and grab Dorian Finney-Smith from the Lakers, Clint Capella from the Hawks. I mean, clearly they're trying to position themselves as a top threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference. So that part has been exciting. The KD angle, to me, is the most thrilling part about it, though, because he has not been in a conference finals game since he left the Warriors in 2019. He's about to turn 37. When you look at the teams that have won championships in these last couple of years, and this is really throughout NBA history, but even these last couple of years, there's been one big guy who gets them over the hump, right? Joker, Steph Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year, pulling those teams to the championship. That's going to have to be Kevin Durant's role in Houston. They have a lot of depth around him, a lot of talented pieces, but he is the alpha guy. We've seen, Steph Curry get injured the last year's playoffs, LeBron James kind of going out in the first round recently. It's asking an awful lot of a superstar at that stage of his career to still be the guy who can lead a deep playoff run, who can lead a championship push. And so I think after a couple of years of going under the radar in Phoenix, where there really wasn't much to talk about, wasn't very fun to watch that team play. They didn't have very good chemistry. KD gets a fresh start in Houston, but he gets the pressure back on him. The spotlight's going to be back on him for sure.
No, that's a great point. Offensively, obviously, we'll see what Alperen Şengün can do if he can be a guy that can enter that class, but it feels like it's going to be Durant. When you look at again, this contour, if you will, of free agency, Ben, is this going to be a new normal where trades rue the day because of the new cap rules and all these things that have shaped so many of these deals, the financial considerations? Or is this just a single year anomaly where a lot of teams look to the free agent market, said it's not really worth having cap space, and in the next couple of years we'll return to free agent palooza and kind of what we've known in the NBA this time of year?
From what I'm hearing, it's going to be more of the norm. The main reason why is they kind of created these new rules where you can extend your contract with your current team in a lot of different scenarios. They got the renegotiations extensions like Jaren Jackson had with the Memphis Grizzlies. You could just keep tacking on extra years, if you're a high-level player. And so, of course, the players and the agents are going to take that money if it's offered to them because it represents financial security. I think the general idea is like, well, even if you're not happy in your location, take the extension and then figure out a trade later. Don't wait to go to free agency because, God forbid you have one of these Achilles injuries that seems like they're striking everybody down, Halliburton and Tatum and Lillard. God forbid you have an injury like that right before you're a free agent. That could wipe out your earning potential, right? And really, put you in a tough spot if you're a player. So, the best names are rarely entering free agency anymore, and I think that's going to continue to be a trend. Now, it does make for an exciting trade market, right? Like Kevin Durant gets traded. Like that's a big deal. Everybody gets excited. I've seen all these trade rumors about LeBron. Is he going to get traded? And again, that drives a lot of interest. And so it's not like, the player movement isn't there. I mean, we're like 3 or 4 months removed from Luka Doncic, of all people, getting traded to the Lakers, right? So there's definitely a lot of movement, but it just gets spread out around the NBA calendar. So we don't really get this great holiday moment where it kind of felt like Christmas with the free agency period back in the day. And, unfortunately, we're left to kind of get excited about, Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes to the Hawks, right? Like that's something that really gets people going here because we don't have anything else going on this week in the NBA.
It just means we get more cacaws from Zach Lowe on his podcast. So that's, I'm all in favor of that. That's a deep cut for all the NBA nerds, but if you know, you know. Ben Golliver with us here on the Hoffman Show, Washington Post, national NBA reporter. So if we think about that thought exercise here, Ben, if you're a team like the Wizards or basically any team that's not the Heat, not the Lakers, not the Rockets, not one of these teams that tends to get big name free agents when they do hit the market, or the Knicks, at least you get a meeting, right? Are you more excited about this new kind of landscape of the league where trades might rue the day? Because if you accumulate the right number of, or the right kinds of assets, the player might be kind of, I don't want to say stuck with you, because a lot of these players do have at least some level of dictation, especially if they're forcing their way out. But that you might have a better chance at acquiring a star, or does this not really change that calculus at all?
Well, look, I mean, we're seeing some non-destination markets, swing some trades this summer for some talented players. Like, look at the Boston Celtics, right? Their season blows up because Tatum gets injured. They need to offload talent. Well, the Portland Trailblazers get Drew Holiday. I mean, as crazy as it might sound, because, Holiday's like 35 years old, he might be their best player next year. He's one of their top talents, and they're able to get him in a trade, giving up Anthony Simons, who, to me, one-way player, not super valuable. And so, the Blazers benefit from this new landscape where the teams are feeling pressure from the hard cap to not just retain as many talented pieces as possible if they're not in title contention mode. The Hawks, who we mentioned earlier, snagged Kristaps Porzingis from the Boston Celtics. So the talent is getting spread out around the league. It creates opportunities for some other organizations. You mentioned the Wizards. I actually really like how they're positioning themselves, right? Because still the easiest way to build up a winner is not going to be trades. If you're in a non-glamour, non-destination type organization, it's always going to be the draft. And what the Wizards are doing is they're just stockpiling recent lottery picks, all with some pretty intriguing pieces. The most recent one of those, obviously, Trey Johnson, the shooting guard coming from Texas, right? So maybe they don't have that alpha player yet, the guy who's going to be like the face of the offense going forward. But they've got a lot of interesting guys between Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr, Bilal, Bub Carrington. Like, they're pulling it together, and they have a very clear vision. Everything kind of makes sense cohesively in terms of which direction they're going. They're trying to clear their books for next summer. Is that going to be some splashy trade for a superstar? Probably not, but it could be some other trades around the edges to bring back more draft picks, to maybe find some veteran players who can help support your young core, sort of like what Houston has done, where they're going out there and getting a bunch of vets to kind of hit fast forward on their own rebuilding effort from a couple of years ago. Flexibility is so prized right now in the NBA because of the hard cap. And I think if you're not a good team, you want to be as flexible as possible. You don't want to have loaded up books. Like, if you're the Raptors, you're bad, but you've also spent all this money on players who aren't that good. Most recently, Jakob Poeltl, but also Brandon Ingram. Scotty Barnes really hasn't quite hit yet. Quickly is on a crazy contract. So the Raptors are bad and they're stuck. The Wizards might be bad, but they're not stuck at all. They're in a very flexible position. I'd be buying stock in the Wizards here over the next 2 or 3 years, no doubt about it.
Ben Golliver, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So all of that kind of culminates in, if you wanted to summarize it, right? Like, we have parity. The NBA has been looking for parity forever. That said, Ben, as you talk to folks around the league, do folks actually like, and this can be league office, this can be teams, and I'm sure this is not unanimous, do teams actually like what this looks like? Like, is this actually, like, it's working to accomplish parity, but do they think that this current hard cap structure where it's really hard to keep a team together, et cetera, is actually good for the league?
Well, obviously the teams that have spent huge money in the past and they want to accumulate as much talent as possible, they're annoyed because they're getting kneecapped, right? So, like, if you're the Warriors or you're the Clippers, you're that kind of a team. You don't want any of these rules that are forcing you to trade away a Klay Thompson, right? Or to let Paul George walk in free agency. Like, you'd way rather be able to just, form a super team. But I think by and large, the NBA league office and the owners are very happy with how this is going. I mean, imagine that you spent $2 billion on a franchise to, own an NBA team, and your team literally did not have a chance to win, right? Like, there's 15, 20 teams, going back through NBA history, until recently, who never even had a chance to compete for a championship. You look at the Pacers, they still haven't won a title, but they got to the finals for the first time in 25 years. The Thunder win their first championship since Oklahoma City, in 2008. You've got the Milwaukee Bucks, who won a championship in 2021. They hadn't won in 50 years. The Nuggets had never won when they won in 2023. So all those teams are like, thank God, we finally have a chance. Parity is great. It opened up the door where if we got the right star, if we got a Giannis or we got a Jokic or we got a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, we actually have a chance to go all the way and not just get beaten down by a super team. So I think in general, the NBA itself is pleased because the owners are pleased. And that's sort of who Adam Silver answers to. I think there's a better question, though, is whether guys like you and me or your listeners, NBA fans, whether they like this, because we had a fascinating, highly competitive NBA finals, between the Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers. But they're small market organizations. They don't have household name super duper stars like a LeBron James or a Steph Curry. And the ratings, came along once they got to Game 7, but they were not nearly as big as maybe you would expect if some more glamorous, familiar teams were in the mix. And so it's a delicate balance for the NBA because they've never been the league of parity. They've always been the league of superstars and super teams, going all the way back to their inception with, the Bill Russell and the Celtics all the way back in the day. So it's kind of an adjustment period for people who are fans of the NBA. And I'm not sure everybody's caught on yet. Like, I think there's still a real adjustment going on for basketball lovers. I don't mind it. It lets me go see new cities that I haven't been to a lot and kind of see new stars, come up, in these playoffs and have these great moments like Halliburton did and like Shea and Jalen Williams did. But I'm not sure it's catching on for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Did you think of what the NBA's brand has been built on? And it's the stars and the super teams. It's Magic and Bird. It's Michael. It's all the way through LeBron and Steph and their rivalry. And I wonder if there is some happy medium, Ben, between the two, because in 3-4 years when the Thunder have to pay everybody, like, there's just not a way that they're going to be able to do it year over year. It feels incredibly unfair that, the Boston Celtics, well, I don't think they're going to wind up trading Jaylen Brown. Like, the fact that they even had to think about it because of the Tatum injury and the fact that they did have to trade Holiday and Porzingis, because it's like, we can't afford to keep this team together that we built, because the tax implications and the apron, like the roster building implications because of the aprons, like, it's too much. We're better off blowing up our team. And if the price of success is you have to blow up your team, I do wonder if there is a breaking point or if perhaps it's gone a little bit too far and there's a way to roll it back just enough that you keep the parity, but also it's not quite as punitive financially. And we can see some super teams, as long as they're built organically, exist in this next era of the NBA.
Well, look, I mean, everything is always an adjustment and an evolution, right? So, if stars want to play together, if stars want to take discounts on their contracts, they can go and form a super team, right? I mean, it comes down to, do stars want to get their full money? And like we saw LeBron, he opted in for $53 million. He didn't want to do any favors to the Lakers by taking a discount. That's his choice. I mean, you understand where he's coming from, all the wealth he's generating for the league. But if you want your money, these rules say it's very difficult to put 3 max-level stars together and still be able to form a competitive team. So I would also point out, though, look, like, I think the Celtics, they took a step back this summer, no question, because they had to shed all this talent, save all this money. I think they're going to be right back in the mix as soon as they get Tatum back healthy. Like, I think this is like a 1-year deal. They're going to be able to find some other pieces around him, keep that core with Jaylen Brown and with Derek White, and they're still going to be a big problem for everybody in the Eastern Conference. You look at what Denver did, the last couple of years, they didn't even have a bench. And so it was kind of depressing to watch the Nuggets because, they've got the best player in the sport, but he doesn't have enough help. And, if they had looser rules like you're describing, well, it'd be easier for Denver to keep players in Denver and Jokic would have more help and be able to compete. Well, they have a pretty good summer. They trade Michael Porter Jr., get off his bad contract, bring back Cam Johnson, sign Tim Hardaway Jr., make some other moves around the edges, and now they're in position where they're going to be legit title contenders next year. So these rules are forcing teams to think harder, to make some painful decisions like you're talking about. But I don't know if it's necessarily wrecking these teams in their ability to have a chance to compete for a championship, right? Like if you're able to, make the right trade here and there, dump an expensive player to a different team, but maybe bring back 2 or 3 role players in that guy's place, you should still be in the mix and able to compete. And I think the real red flag warning to me would be if they consistently get into a situation where the very best players can't compete for championships. And like right now, Giannis is in that spot in Milwaukee. Like they've just mortgaged so much of their assets. They don't have enough talent. Even though they did this whole Damian Lillard waiving and bringing in Miles Turner, like he's not going to be able to compete for a title next year. We got to watch the Lakers with Luka. Like, are they going to be in a position to compete for a title? That's another one to keep an eye on because what you want is you want your premier players always having a chance. And going into next year, Shea has a chance. Jokic has a chance. Once Tatum's back healthy the following year, I think he's going to have a chance. To me, that's the sign of a healthy league. But if it starts to become too difficult for those guys to have playoff runs, then the NBA is really going to need to rethink some of these rules. But these rules are here to stay. I don't anticipate any adjustments in the near term. We all just have to kind of get used to it.
Free advice for the league office: get rid of the Supermax. That's how you accomplish. Because I love that framing, Ben. I think it's so good. The sign of a healthy league is that your best players are competing for championships. But if they inherently cost more than everyone else artificially because other teams can't give them the same, or keep the Supermax but don't make it count the full amount towards the cap, just make it count the regular max. Now you allow the team building to be easier, but then I'm sure that the league office would be like, well, you've got the best of the best, so you can't. You're gonna have to make do with what's left. It's just that to me has always felt like the really silly one, and very very few of those super maxes have ever worked out. That seems to be the thing that kneecaps these teams. Is even a player as great as Giannis, we're kind of seeing in Milwaukee.
It's a great point. And when you're looking at the Supermax, like, Shea's hadn't kicked in yet, right?
Right.
So that's why they have the money to kind of, spend on all these other guys. It is going to get tight there in Oklahoma City once they have to fully extend Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, and they're going to have the same problems everybody else does. I think the earlier you can win, like Tatum's number has gone way up, but Boston was competing for years before he got on the huge number, right? So the Supermax rules, in a way, I don't think it was intentional. It's actually kind of made the finals and like the championship chase. It's made it more of a younger man sport, right? Like where it's you're kind of getting guys competing when they're 24, 25, 26 instead of that traditional arc, which we used to expect where, you're 28, 29, 30, and that's where you're really going for it. So, that does feel like something that they might want to look at. I like your proposal of being able to give a Supermax so that a small market team could keep a megastar, like the Thunder would be able to pay Shea more than everybody else, but maybe it doesn't count against their books quite as much, so they're still able to build around him. I think that's a pretty sensible compromise, but again, the NBA is going to be years away from being able to put something like that in.
Oh, next time you talk to Adam Silver, just tell him to call me. Just give him my number. I'm happy to tell him. Last but not least, with Ben Golliver, national NBA reporter for the Washington Post. You mentioned LeBron a couple minutes ago. That seems to be the biggest smoking chimney that we're still waiting to see what exactly is cooking there. He obviously opted in, is like, give me the money, we'll figure it out later. And then there's a lot of different reporting of a lot of different things. Rich Paul, his agent, has said, we haven't talked to them all about trades, but we're monitoring the situation. Ben, when it's all said and done, where do you think LeBron James plays this season?
I think he will start the season in Los Angeles, but I think, the statement from Rich Paul and a lot of the buzz, it's coming from the fact that LeBron, he had to pick up his option. He didn't get a new contract. He didn't get an extension. Business did not unfold like it typically has for him, where, in past years with the Lakers, they've just always given him that future money and given him that security of having the extra year. And this time they didn't. And so that's an obvious signal. If you're going in as an expiring contract and you're a superstar level player like LeBron, that's an obvious signal that you need to go in and explore your options because the Lakers didn't take care of you, right? And that's the first time they haven't done that. So I think it's reasonable for him to look around. I think the problem for him is the number of teams that he's actually going to want to play for with a chance to win a championship is very short, right? It's not a deep pool of contenders. And those contending teams already have number one guys in place, right? So he would have to fill a similar role like he does with the Lakers, where now it's Luka's team. And so that part gets really tricky. How many teams that are contenders want to blow up their cores to hand the keys to LeBron James at this point of his career? I think it's a really, really short list. And so I think ultimately, once everything shakes out, there's a lot of benefits to LeBron for playing in LA. He loves being on that stage. I live here in Los Angeles, like all the celebrities courtside, the actors, the rappers, the movie stars. He just likes being in that world. The Lakers are, of course, I think the most glamorous team in the league right now. I think he likes being one of the faces of that. They did, get the 3 seed. Like, they weren't bad last year. They got smoked in the playoffs, and obviously they need to, try to make some roster upgrades. And surely he's trying to apply some pressure on that front like he always does. But I think it's a very good fallback option, even if he doesn't have the financial security of a multi-year deal. But, what his next chapter looks like, I think that's still an open question. Like, he's flirted with retirement for years. I could see him thinking, well, hey, I'm still a top 10 guy. I was all NBA last year. Like, I should still be able to command a big contract. So I want to go somewhere where they're going to pay me. I could obviously see him, still trying to chase Jordan. He doesn't have the 6 rings. So that's always going to be a motivating factor. There's the family aspect where he's playing with Bronny, and, his next son is coming up. He's going to be draft eligible soon. You add all those things together, LeBron's got a lot of things that he needs to weigh. And in past decisions, he's decided, hey, LA is still the best spot. We'll see if that changes here next summer.
Going to be very, very interesting to follow. Ben Golliver, Washington Post, national NBA writer. Golliver, this was great. Thanks so much for doing it, and we'll talk to you here down the line.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You as well, and happy holiday. Ben Golliver with us here on The Hoffman Show.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's The Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.